Welcome, everyone. Today we have Danielle Rourke with us. Danielle is a senior strategist for higher education working for Dell Alienware. So, welcome, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So, Danielle, can you tell us what exactly are you doing for Dell?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. As a higher education strategist, I don't know, I like to say that I'm kind of a mediator or a translator between Dell Technologies as a corporation and a service provider and our educational customers, specifically the higher educational customers. Um, I I get the privilege to know the great technological advancements that Dell Technologies and all of its subsidiaries and family of products are doing and putting out. But then I get to think strategically about how does that product actually help a higher education institution. So for instance, we've got a great product called Boomi, and that's fabulous and it helps with integrations. But why does a higher education institution care? Well,
Sure.
there's opportunities to connect your learning management system and your student information system.
Hmm.
Those are kind of some of the things that I do. I also help our sales teams, our products teams understand more of the nuances of higher education. Since I actually, before I worked at Dell, I was at the University of Colorado. I was in their IT department, and I got that experience of being in higher education and understanding all of the regulations and the complexities that
Sure.
are
And we're
behind
going to
it.
get into some of that, your past
Oh,
higher ed experience. We're going to get into that a little bit today, too. So, we are going to talk about
fabulous.
that.
Awesome. No, that's great. So that's another thing that we help, us as education strategists, we help Dell, the company, understand what are those nuances and what are the things we need to be considering for higher education versus corporate America, or just corporate global, any company really in the world that we can help. And then, I get to go and learn about the really amazing things that higher education institutions are
Sure.
doing and bring that back to Dell and to our partners and to our other customers. If the original customer said that that was okay to share, and just be able to share those stories and get that out there. So that's kind of my day job. And then I affectionately say that I have a side gig, being kind of our higher education subject matter expert for esports. And you may ask me more questions about my
Yeah.
background, so
So,
I'll save it for then.
Yeah, so Danielle and I met, she's doing this big esports initiative for Dell with a lot of the higher ed and high schools and really any school system involved in esports right now. And so that's how we connected. And so how did this come about? You just described your job and I only heard esports at the end. So first of all, where did you even get involved in esports at all, like life wise? And then how did this happen at Dell?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have actually been a gamer since I was a little girl. I remember playing like I don't know if anybody's going to remember these games, but like there was an Alley Cat game on the old 386 machines, and then the bartender game where you like sling the beer down
Yeah,
the.
yeah, I do remember that game. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the old DOS-based games where it's like I turned north, you stepped on a frog. Like those those were my
Yes.
my bread and butter when I was a kid. And then just as consoles got better, as PC gaming got better, I just kind of kept up with it. I've loved gaming and have been passionate about that for years and years. And kind of the funny story that I'll tell is when I went down to interview for this higher education strategist position, down in Round Rock. If you ever get a chance to visit Dell headquarters, they have this awesome portion of the building. It's kind of an experience lounge where you
Okay.
can see some of the new technology and the new models of laptops and monitors and things like that. And they had this corner dedicated to Alienware and the battle stations. And so, I mean, they had it decked out: RGB lighting, the curved monitors, the
Sure.
gaming chairs. And I got so very excited about it. And I said, "Hey, can someone take a picture so I can make my teenage son jealous?" And so they did. But as they were doing that, the hiring manager, who is actually our director of education strategy, said, "So, do you like video games? Is that an interest area for you?" And I kind of geeked out on him a little bit, which is potentially a risky move when you're
Sure.
interviewing for a job. But yeah, I kind of shared my background and my passion, and he goes, "I may have a side job for you."
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of how I got into it. And honestly, I was not as knowledgeable about the esports side, the competitive side
Sure.
of gaming, until I really dove into it here with Dell Technologies and started understanding the academic and curriculum and community engagement
Sure.
and all of those sides of esports. And it's just been fascinating to learn. So,
So I assume the other, other people, the other higher ed strategists, they're not focused on esports. This is like your thing. That's, really wasn't part of your job. It was really like a side thing that now has become a big thing, because you're becoming well known in the esports industry as the Dell rep, someone people want to turn to and ask for advice and talk to. So it's really cool to see that. It's been really amazing to kind of watch how, just the industry's grown and how you've really linked all the universities together, because it's been a pretty cool thing for me to witness over the last few months. So that's been really neat to
thank you.
see. Okay, so this wasn't always something that you did. Esports, as you talked about, obviously that's my interest, and one of my passions is gaming, and your interest is gaming as well. But, that's not how your career started out. It's not how my career started out whatsoever either. I mean, and so you actually started out, your first college experience was you were getting an associate's degree in psychology. Like what? So what did you want to be? Like what was going through your mind at this point in your life? You're young college student, associates, you're in psych.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, not to dive too much into my background, but just to help set the context a little bit. When I was in high school, I actually had already pre-applied to like the art institutes, because I knew I wanted to be involved in games. Like my dream job when I was in high school was to be a cinematics person for Blizzard. So
Wow.
that was what I wanted to do, and so I'd actually already pre-enrolled, and that was going to be my path when I graduated. Life is funny and takes you down different paths depending on the choices you make, and so I actually ended up I got pregnant with my son between my sophomore and junior year in high school, and knew that I needed to work to help support him, things like that.
Sure.
So I actually ended up dropping out of high school between
Wow.
my sophomore and junior year. But I knew that I didn't want to kind of not meet my own expectations as far as an education went or the opportunities that I would have. And I also wanted to make my son proud of me. So I did drop out, but I immediately went and got my GED. And
Okay.
then with that GED, I was able to go to my local community college and enrolled in an associate's degree. And so that's where I enrolled in the Associates of Psychology. I kind of loved just the process of how people thought and
Okay.
all the different aspects of psychology and what makes people tick and things like that. And so that's where I wanted to go. And that's where I started off with at my associate's degree. Do you want me to go into
So, well,
like the rest of my?
so how old were you when you started your associate's degree? Like, were you even past 18 at this point?
No, no, I was 17.
Wow. So you were so young going to college and doing all this. I mean, it's really amazing. And I don't think people who have children necessarily always understand how hard it is. I have three kids, and it is a extreme time and financial, and it becomes your whole entire life revolve. All of a sudden, what you cared about almost doesn't matter as much anymore.
Yeah.
It's your kid, and you have to do what you have to do. So you got your associate's degree, you got that, and then you started to actually go back into your passion for tech, because you went and got your bachelor's degree. You got a bachelor's degree in computer operations technology and business quality management. So that's still not in this gaming area and cinematics. So what where you got your associates in psych, but then you were like, I don't want to move further in psychology. How did you kind of transition at that point?
Yeah, I mean, your point exactly is what happened there. You have a kid and you realize you're kind of responsible for this other,
Yes.
human being blob at the baby
Yeah.
stage. And so I started the deeper I got into the psychology, the more I realized, in order to do kind of what I had wanted to do there, I was going to need a doctorate.
Yeah, you
And
really do in psych.
I, yeah, exactly. And so I said, okay, what can I do? What are my skills? What are my interests? What are my passions that don't necessarily require me to have that long term of an investment in education? Because a doctorate is a huge commitment. And so then I started looking back at tech and saying, okay, I've always been good with computers. When I was younger, I actually helped fix some of the computers when I was in school. So let's go there because I know that that's a good field. Tech is, a huge and very important field, and it's only gotten more so.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was kind of my pivot. There was okay, let's do that. I also was fortunate enough to go to a school, Southwestern College there in Kansas, that actually had an adult program, like a working professionals program.
Gotcha. So when you got your bachelor's, it was like a bachelor's for working professionals. So was it?
Yeah,
Does that mean the classes were at night or online?
both.
Both.
Yeah, it provided a lot of flexibility. So that way I could still work a full-time job, still be a mom and take care of my son, but I was still making progress towards my educational and academic goals.
So were you able to complete your degree like in a traditional, well, I guess when you add in your, like, did it take longer to go through because of that? Or were you still pretty much like a 4 year from your associates to that, like finishing your bachelor's? So you were pretty on time.
I think I took a semester off. I think there
Gotcha.
was, so it was like an extra semester. But other than that, yeah, I stayed on track.
So that's, I mean, that's, not all, a traditional undergrad college student probably doesn't understand how impressive what you just told me is. Forget the esports stuff you're doing. You literally were young, able to work, go to college and make it through really successful. And not only that, you went right into a master's degree. Right from bachelor's, you went and got your master's. So you went and got a master's in informational technology, and you're working at T-Mobile at this time. You had a bunch of like different jobs before that, but this seems like was this your first like real professional like gig kind of, or was this still like,
Yeah, well, yes and no. So it was a first real professional gig in that it helped me really hone in on what I wanted to do. It was, it provided me the financial stability that I needed to be able to go to school and to have my son and things like that. And it taught me a lot of soft skills actually. So I was very happy about that. But and I pursued, that particular pathway that I was on. I tried to say, hey, can I be an IT person? There weren't that many positions at each location. So then I started looking outside based on the new credentials that I had. And so that's when I went to be a test project manager and kind of got my foot in the door in the true, IT industry, I guess, if you want to say it that way, as a tester. And, I always say I'm a QA tester person at heart. I love to break things and see where they go and, be able to take it to our amazing developers. Because that was actually, when I was doing my bachelor's degree, I had actually initially started in computer programming. And after, I was always somebody who liked to get A's. And after I got like my second or third C or D in a programming class, I was like, this is not for me. This is not the right path. I cannot do this. So that's when I switched over to operations and like quality management and things like that.
Cool. Yeah, I started out as a programmer, and then I realized really quickly that while I enjoyed programming, I didn't want to do it for someone else. And I switched majors. It just wasn't. I loved the tech. I liked playing with the tech. I liked learning the software, but I wasn't as much interested in the programming portion as I guess I should have been if I wanted to stay a CS major. So I switched out of it. All right. So at this point, you're going to school. You're getting your master's. Now your master's is 100% online. Is that correct?
It was.
Now,
yeah,
how do you like I just am curious about this. Do you like online learning? Like, did you excel at it? Did you do well? Because some people really have it, it takes that self-motivation. It's hard.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an interesting time we're living in for that question
Oh,
too.
sure.
So,
I mean, everyone. I mean, that's what I do
yeah.
professionally is teach people how to teach online. Like I'm an instructional designer. I teach people how to teach online. So I get it very much so how relevant it is. And that's one of the reasons I'm so curious about how you liked it and managed.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I think it's even out on my LinkedIn profile that I'm an online education advocate. So I am, a firm believer. I love being an advocate for it. And, based now too on the stories that we've just exchanged, you can kind of understand why I am passionate about
Oh
it because
yeah,
I would not be where I am today if those opportunities and those methodologies of learning had not existed.
sure.
So I'm incredibly passionate about it. Where I was in my life, being, working full time, supporting myself and my son, and just kind of going through all of that, there was no way that I could do a traditional
Sure.
undergrad or graduate degree. In the sense of like living in the dorms and,
Sure.
things
Yeah.
like
All that
that.
stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love those opportunities, and it's something that I'm striving for my son. My son's going to go to college in the fall, so I'm so excited that he gets to have those opportunities. But just the choices that I personally made in life, I did not have those particular opportunities. But the fact that there was online education and high quality online education where I could still learn and meet people and network and gain skills, it was absolutely invaluable to me,
Yeah.
and I am forever grateful for it.
I mean, it's a wonderful time to be alive that we could do that, because in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that those programs, there was no I mean, there was distance like correspondence courses, but not the same as having an instructor and,
Hmm.
what we have. It just wasn't the same. So after this, you get a job at Verizon, and you are a, let's see, quality project manager at Verizon,
Hmm.
QA project manager at Verizon. And I noticed you're actually moving into more of like a managerial and training role, like almost more on the HR side of business. Now, I'm an instructional designer. I just mentioned, like, that's what I do, is training. So was that like a did that become something you enjoyed doing? Like, do you like the training, teaching side of things? I see you were doing it at T-Mobile and really getting into it at Verizon.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is one of the things that motivates me about many of the jobs that I've held, has been the opportunity to recognize, that there are new people that don't necessarily have the experiences that I do, or been able to necessarily even have the same schooling that I had. And so to me, it's incredibly important to be able to give that back. And then, I think that is truly, I've always had a passion for learning. I loved school. I was that little girl who, like, a library day was my favorite day of the week because I could go and check out 7 books and read them all and then bring them. It was great. So I was a total nerd. I loved school. I loved learning. And I think getting into that kind of training aspect of the professional world
Mm-hmm.
helped me kind of keep that alive.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hated school until I found teachers in high school that actually appreciated. I didn't fit well into the school model.
Hmm.
And it took me a while to figure out how I was more project based. I was not a sit in class at this time and do this. It was more, I didn't fit that mold. And it wasn't maybe until my junior year of college that something like clicked in my head. And I was all of a sudden like, I never got a B after that, all like A's.
Hmm.
And maybe it was my sophomore year of college. It was like all of a sudden I never had below like a 3.9 GPA. It was like it took me a while to hit that point, but school didn't fit my mold well, at least that elementary, middle, and high school, for whatever reason. And I always think about that when I look at my kids and I talk to people about teaching now, and I have to think back, like, this didn't fit me. What went wrong? What wasn't right? And I think we're much better at that nowadays, but we weren't in like the 90s when I was a kid going to school. So
Absolutely. Well, and if you don't mind, just to follow up on that, like, I absolutely agree with that, and I think that that's something that we've learned in spades over this
yeah,
particular time period in history, is the fact that, always before there was kind of that differentiation between those who were good at online learning or liked it and those who really needed to be in class. It was, self-motivation, like you mentioned,
sure.
and delivery methods, and what was the content and the activities interesting, or was it just worksheet after worksheet after worksheet. And I think that we've seen that so much in this past year too, is you have to be engaging with students no matter what delivery
Sure.
method it is that if you have someone who's learning new content, it has to be engaging in whatever delivery method you have.
Yes, and it's like some good has come out of COVID, that we've learned like some of the stuff we need. But what happened in K to 12? I think people aren't getting that teachers were put in this like emergency situation. They aren't trained to teach online, And like, there's a big difference between the online emergency instruction and like a quality, well put together planned online course.
Yes.
It's like I try to tell people, like, look, teachers were put in just a terrible situation beyond their control. They didn't even, nothing was planned for, so they did the best they could. But like, that's not what good online learning is, through no fault of the teacher or school. I mean, and they did their best, but like, there's a big difference there between what a quality online course is and not, and I
Absolutely.
try to
Absolutely. Yeah.
explain that.
And yeah, just, changing, you have to fundamentally change the way that the curriculum is delivered. Like, you can't just say, well, this is what I did in my lecture halls or things like that. And so I'm just going to record myself doing it and put it up on your learning management system. You have to really rethink that pedagogy.
Yes, I think higher ed is really seeing right now how hard and difficult it is to teach an online course. They're seeing that it's not just something that they can just throw their PowerPoint slides up on in a learning management system, because that's what they were doing or wanted to do when COVID first hit. I was like, whoa, can't do
Yeah.
this. I'm like, thank goodness for the last like 3 to 4 years I was building a studio at home with like getting lights and cameras, because you couldn't buy them,
Yeah.
8
Yeah.
months ago. You couldn't buy a camera. They were all sold out everywhere.
Exactly. Exactly.
So getting in, actually, let's go into higher ed, because that's where you spent some time at a company, Sargil.
Cargill. Yeah. Actually, the world's
Cargill.
largest privately held food company.
Yeah, so you were there for 5 years in between Verizon, just so if someone's following along with your kind of timeline. But you go to the University of Colorado Boulder. So first of all, this is a move. You leave, do you actually leave Kansas at this point and go, so this is
Yeah.
like is this like your first big move, or had you moved before that, like out of where you grew up kind of, or where you were raising your son? Like, was this like a big step?
Yeah, it was actually a return. So when I was working at Verizon, that was the first time I had kind of left Kansas,
Okay.
left home with Kansas. That was down in Colorado Springs. So I was there for 2 years.
Gotcha.
We went back, due to family reasons, recession reasons, all kinds of stuff, back to Kansas for a few years. But literally every single day, our family missed the mountains.
Yeah.
And so then we started saying, okay, well, if we were going to look for opportunities, let's go someplace we love. And University of Colorado had an amazing opportunity available. So that's where we came.
Okay, so that's why you went to Boulder. So you get to University of Boulder. I noticed that you're there. You're there for 3 years. You start as a senior business analyst, move to online education program manager, and then to associate director of academic and student IT services. So I'm in higher ed, so I know that like moving to a different position every year is a lot. Were these unilateral? Were these like climbing up? Like, why did you change so much? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, there was so much going on at University of Colorado and so many opportunities, so many new innovative programs and things like that. So, kind of classical training through some of my other jobs as a business analyst. So that was where I stepped in, and then started to make these relationships, started to also let my supervisors know, like my directors and executive directors. I told them that, online learning is a passion area for me. And so if you have any projects that
Gotcha.
come up around learning management systems, online learning, things like that, let me know. And I was fortunate enough to have an awesome director who said, okay, cool, we've got this project over here. We're going to replace our entire learning management system. Like, why don't you go beyond
Wow.
that? So, I got to help us transition from D2L to Canvas, and be a part of that team, and actually see the impact that it had on the students and the faculty members who found it was easier to utilize that learning management system. So that was really great. So really just speaking up and saying, this is where my passion area is. If opportunities come up, I'd really like to raise my hand for it, because your directors, your bosses, they aren't necessarily mind readers. So you have to let them know, like, this is what I'd like to do, and not be afraid in thinking that, oh, well, if I say I want to do something else, then they're going to think I'm not dedicated to my job, or they're going to think I'm looking for something else. Just be upfront with them and share that with them and say, hey, I like working here. This is where I want to grow to. And if they know that, they can help you along that path.
I love that point. I mean, it's awesome. It's something I've told my students time and time again. You have to take initiative at jobs. I mean, just in the last, we've been talking for 25 minutes. You've told me two different times that you, at least, and if not more, throughout all these positions, that you have just simply spoken up with the esports to get in from Dell, not part of your job. All of a sudden, it's become like this huge thing. Now at Boulder, you've actually transitioned in 3 years, three different titles, which is huge. And, at a direct associate director level, which is for higher ed, like a pretty big jump. Like you're really moved up like very fast. That's impressive, but it just shows that a little bit of initiative, like as you said, so simple, is just letting them know, hey, I'm kind of interested in this. They don't know. They don't even know that they have anyone interested in something, and they're at a meeting and someone says, hey, online learning, and they're like, he's like, or who he or she is like, you know what? I have one of my employees actually is interested in that. Let's, it can just happen
Yeah.
that fast. And just by speaking up, taking some initiative is such a big, big, big step and very important for people to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, it can be scary and it can be daunting, or you can have all of these what ifs, or, I'm not
Sure.
good enough, or things in your head. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with speaking up tactfully, respectfully, and at the
Yeah.
right time. Like you don't necessarily want to do it like in
Yeah.
the middle of an all hands meeting or
Yeah.
something. But
You do it
um,
strategically, and
yeah.
it can really work out in your advantage. Definitely, definitely. I learned that lesson. I was a management consultant when I first graduated college at Booz Allen Hamilton in DC,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
met with one of my. I just went into the partner's office one day and I said, "Hey, can I have a meeting with you?" And he was like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, if I ever get a contract, I want to know what my next steps are." And he was like, "No junior person has ever asked to have a meeting with me, let alone asking to like interested in like like his job." And he just thought that was so like fascinating and interesting. And then
Mhm.
I established rapport with him and could say hi to him, and he knew my name, he knew who I was out of all the 100 people he managed. It's little
Yeah.
things like that go a long way, surprisingly, for people just don't always realize that. So it's good,
Exactly.
good, good point. So you're at Boulder, you're there for 3 years, and then you go to Dell. You're in Dell January 2020, go to Dell. So first of all, why the switch?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting story, you know, because I was not looking to leave. I was super happy at University of Colorado Boulder and was involved in really interesting things going on. Um, and this, I'm going to share this story just because I want people to know that sometimes your network is people you don't even expect it to be.
Yeah,
It's not always like a boss or a
sure.
coworker or things like that. So I had a position on my team because I managed a team. And so I had a position on my team that I needed to fill. I posted it, we did interviews, and I met this amazing woman named Adrienne. And she came in, and oh my gosh, I wanted her on my team. Like, I was like, this is a person I need to have on my team
Sure.
because she's engaging and smart and has experience in high ed, and it's great. And unfortunately, she decided to go a different route. She had multiple offers that came her way,
Sure.
and so I was bummed. I was like, man, that really stinks. I would have loved to have her on my team, but stuff happens, and so you move on.
Sure.
And literally about 6 months after that, Adrian reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I took this amazing position with Dell." And I said, "Oh, congratulations. I was wondering where you went. This is great." And she says, "Yeah, and we're expanding our team, and we would like to have someone in kind of the Rocky Mountain Midwest region." And when my director asked me if I knew anybody, I immediately thought of you and the time that I spent with you there at Boulder learning about your programs and things like that. And so would you like to apply for this job? And I was like, interesting. Okay. And so when I learned more about it and found out that there was the opportunity to work with hundreds of colleges and universities, across the U.S.
Sure.
and engage and help kind of bring some of what I had learned to those colleges and universities, and be able to have kind of just the amazing resources, not only in technology, but also in people that Dell has, and be able to leverage that to help other higher education institutions, on a broader scale. That was just an amazing opportunity that I thought, okay, I need to take this. This has come before me without me even looking. I need to explore this particular option.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're at Dell. You get to Dell January 2020. You're like, I'm starting a new year. 2020, this is going to be awesome. New job. Boom. 2 months later, 3 months later, pandemic. So I assume, were you already virtual, working virtually before the pandemic? Was your job virtual, or did you have to like switch to be virtual?
Yeah, so us as education strategists, really, prior to March of 2020,
Sure.
our goal was to go out and to meet with higher education institutions and be able to sit down, have dinners, have discussions, tour
Wow.
the campuses, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we were supposed to be traveling a lot of the time to these campuses and to have these really great meetings and interactions. And it all changed in March, and
Yeah.
so we pivoted. So like I wasn't reporting to an office location anyways, just due
Sure.
to the nature of my job. But then we all started working from home and having that hashtag Zoom life.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yep.
8 to 10 meetings a day, every day. But it was a really interesting opportunity because we were able to utilize, a lot of the skills that we had learned, a lot of the skills I had learned in my previous jobs, working with teams, like when I was at Cargill, I managed a team in India. And so I kind of had to learn how to build
Sure.
those relationships virtually. And so all of those different experiences that I had had contributed to helping me be able to build those relationships via this new virtual life that we were living. And then also just kind of helping guide our team members through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, awesome. So here's just like an odd question, I guess. So you work for Dell. Is it Dell Alienware, or do you not like is Alienware considered like a separate company, or like how does that work? How does that relationship work between these two companies? I could very easily Google that, but it happened to cross my mind as you're talking about Dell.
No worries, no worries. And if any of my Dell friends are out there, please forgive me if I get the terminology not 100% precise. But Dell Technologies is a large grouping of companies, of services, of products.
Okay.
And so kind of underneath that, you have different
A
brands
bunch
and
of like
different.
products and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So Alienware is one of those
One of
that
the many.
is in the Dell Technologies family.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
and I specifically, my role in our education strategy team, we are aligned to kind of the Dell Technologies umbrella proper, as opposed to me being inside of the Alienware
Sure,
Corporation.
sure.
But I work hand in hand and side by side with a lot of the product folks, the specialists on Alienware, because as you know, like Alienware is kind of a big deal in
Yeah, I mean
esports.
that's why
Like
like
it's
I say Dell. I want to say Alienware because that's what is like. That's the thing to me is it's Alienware, and I realize it's one of Dell's products. The same way
yeah,
Microsoft Office is one of Microsoft's products, and Twitch Prime is one of Amazon's like it's I
exactly.
assume it's a similar relationship to that, but I was always curious, and that's for it's great for me because most universities like we have a contract through Dell, so like I can only buy Dell computers. I could never get an Alienware until they were one company, and now I have multiple Alienwares surrounding me right now in my studio because of that. So thank you, Dell, for actually merging with Alienware and making that very easy on universities. All right.
Absolutely.
So your current job, so like what are your like benchmarks? Like what do they say like you have to do this, like this is how we measure you. Like what are they comparing you? Like what are you supposed to do? Like what is it they're like you have to do this each year, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And being a strategist is kind of a wonderful thing because, um, you know, yes, we are, you know, trying to help sales and things like that, but we get to, as strategists, we kind of get to expand our outlook and look at relationships and innovations and customer stories and partnerships and just how can we help? How can we help get the resources that Dell has, whether that's hardware or whether that's connections or whether that is partnerships or even some of, like the Dell giving side of things and all of that. Like, how can we better help give back, not only to our customers, but also community? So, one of our main goals is enabling human progress, and that's such a broad statement, but it really encapsulates what Dell Technologies is trying to do, and kind of gives the flexibility to say we're going to enable human progress over here in healthcare, or we're going to do this over here in education and things like that. So as far as like solid KPI metrics, we have team goals of things like building relationships, meeting with new educational customers that maybe we've never met with one-on-one before, or, and really diving deeper into that. Also working on large innovative projects, like what have we done this year that has really driven innovation and helped not only Dell succeed, but our customers succeed. So it's not so much like you need to
X
deliver
amount of
X
sales
amount
per year. Yeah, sure.
Right, exactly.
Sure. So did they realize how the large thing that you're creating in the collegiate esports? I mean, I'm serious. Like it did not exist, and this is something we didn't have, but like you have literally connected like collegiate esports in a way that it's not been connected. I mean, even with like the organizations like NACE and stuff, like we didn't have this, like we have a Discord and a monthly meeting and different companies coming in and presenting to us, and there's a place where we are all connected and new people are coming in. Like, do they realize how big that really is for Dell itself? Like, it is a big thing.
I think so, and I think it's spreading even. Just the more people that we work with, the more people we bring in. Like, for example, I think you were there like back in November when we brought in the Tobii eye tracker.
Yes, that was my first meeting. I had to introduce myself that meeting. That was
perfect.
The one where I had to introduce myself. Yes, that was my first one. But no, that's what I mean. Like getting to see those technologies and hear from them and meet with everyone around the industry is a pretty big network that you have created for them.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It's definitely a team effort. It's wonderful. And, just kind of to give the history of that, it really started very organically. And it was, one of our customers in Europe said, "Hey, I'd really like to know what's going on at colleges and universities in the United States around esports." And so we said, "Okay, cool. We can help with that. We can help connect you." And so then we reached out to, a couple of our friends in the United States and said, "Hey, would you be willing to have this meeting?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And so we had that. And then we realized, okay, we've got these other topics to talk about. And so we scheduled a couple more follow-up meetings. And we realized each time we were going over, we kept wanting to talk about more things. We wanted to schedule follow-up meetings. And so we said, why don't we just make this, a monthly thing? Why don't we really have this focus on esports research and a community for educators, especially in higher education, around esports and how to help make it healthy and sustainable, and learn from each other and help each other with study participants or activities or webinars, things like that.
No, it's awesome because it's nice to see a company that is supporting esports actually create this community, and not just like a random person where I have to worry about who's the moderator, who's the owner of it. It's like it's a good initiative that I think is really beneficial for me as a faculty member who's entering the esports space. So it is very beneficial, I just think it's awesome. So I really, really, really enjoy it, and I look forward to having it. So now you're in this esports space. So now you're in this esports space. Your people come to you for advice about things that are happening. People want to speak to you about what's going on. And as you said, you've always been a huge gamer, but you really weren't. Esports wasn't necessarily like your bigot. It was really the gaming community and the game portion, which I think is natural for most of us coming in, especially like me, like people, all my friends my age, like that's more the natural space. They're gamers becoming more interested in esports. So I think that's pretty natural progression, but not like the 14-year-old kid that like has grown up with it, like my 10-year-olds that know everything. But so now you're like in it and you're being looked at as an industry expert. So what do you think of this industry? Do you think that it's like got a good future? Do you think we're in a bubble? Do you think like what do you see happening? Like what trends in your mind do you see happening right now?
That's a gigantic question.
Yes, it is. I realize that.
Yeah, so as far as I'm going to try to address some of the pieces there, what do I think of the industry? I think it's fantastic because it's providing more opportunities into gaming. I know when I was a little kid, I thought, okay, I have to be an artist to make the art for games, or a professional gamer, or a programmer. Which honestly, now that I'm looking back on it, that probably influenced some of my decisions.
Sure.
But I think that the esports industry especially has shown that there's this entire ecosystem of support that goes around it. I've seen a graphic out there that talks about how, for every one professional gamer, there's probably 10 different people that support them, whether that's, a nutritionist, a therapist, a
Sure.
physical therapist, an HR person, a lawyer, a payroll person. There's so many different aspects. And that is one of the things that I'm so excited about, is that it's creating opportunities for those kids and for those students and these young people. And heck, middle-aged people, who cares?
Yeah.
Like it's creating opportunities to be able to work with something that you love and you're passionate about, which is, gaming or just gaming culture, but really turn that into a successful career that you can support yourself and you can support your family. And, you don't have to make that either or choice necessarily anymore. So I think that's fantastically exciting. I also absolutely love how much engagement we're starting to get from higher education, especially from like a moving into the workforce kind of look, as well as the esports research that we've talked about.
Sure.
Just making things healthier and getting those beautiful academic minds that really understand scientific research and being able to apply that to making things healthier. But also at the K-12 level, as far as, there's more people getting interested, more people understand their kids are playing this, their students are playing this, and hey, wait a sec, it's more than just a pastime. You can create career and technical education opportunities out of it.
Absolutely.
You can, there are legitimate job pathways that are more than just the professional gaming. Professional gaming is great, by the way, don't get me wrong, but there's so many more opportunities out there. And then also that there are so many ways to tie it to global competencies that students need, whether that's teamwork or, collaboration or even strategy. Good Lord, take one look and watch somebody play League of Legends try to tell me that there's not strategy behind the teams.
Yeah, exactly.
That. So, and just seeing that, and, I'll share one other thing. One of the amazing groups that we have in Dell Technologies, my colleague Katina up in Canada, she really spearheaded this initiative along with Microsoft and Intel, but is the Girls Who Game program.
Yep.
Really, trying to make sure that those girls in that 4th through 8th grade age range, where very often, and according to the research, we've seen, their interest in STEM fields take a nosedive, really creating that community for them, showing them it's cool to be interested in tech. It's fun to be able to play Minecraft with your friends and do some coding and things like that. But one of those opportunities, just kind of going back to that strategy comment, we had a tournament. We had a Girls Who Game tournament back in January. And, we had girls from different schools competing virtually against each other, doing design build challenges in Minecraft. And not only the thoughtfulness and the creativity that went on behind it, but for example, I was volunteering as a judge for one particular group of girls, and their school program was so large they had to split into 2 groups. So in the tournament bracket of the Design and Build Challenge, they eventually went up against the other group of girls from their same school. And they got so strategic, just, instantly. when they found out that they were competing against these other girls that they knew really well, they started saying, oh, okay, I know she's really good at detail, so we need to make sure we put a lot of detail in our build. And I know that she is fantastic at using this type of block in Minecraft, so we need to come up with something that's going to be equally.
Sure.
And it was just amazing because it's these young girls, doing what comes naturally to them, but there are so many applications of that for, later on in life and when they get into careers or when they have relationships or studies, things like that.
Yeah, one of the things I try to explain to people is that video games are like the heart of all these STEM fields. Like if you talk to any CEO, any of the big like people in the last like 20 years, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, any of those people, and ask them what got you interested in tech. Everyone, if you go back through their interviews, because I've done it, so that I can have their quotes. How did you get started in tech? Well, I played video games, and that led me to wanting to make my own video game. And it was, the rest is history for those few people, but that it was like the heart of it. It's what unites us in our interest in it. It's our first exposure to that tech, is that love for video games, and how do you take that and nurture a student to get them to do all this great stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that that's, what's so important now with the educators actually getting into it and understanding it a bit more and recognizing the benefits that there are to it, because then you can start to put some structures and some guide rails, not to the effect that you're squashing the natural creativity or fun that comes from the games, but rather taking that natural creativity and fun and helping to kind of direct it into useful pathways and useful skills and ways to develop healthy habits. If you've got this amazing esports coach in your middle school, and you get the group together and you have fun and you build that community and you learn teamwork, that coach can be an inspiration, and that coach can lead one of those kids to say, hey, I want to be a teacher that is also going to be a coach for esports. Or, that person can be an example that says, hey, I love gaming as much as you guys do, but, I'm going to put a 2-hour limit on it, and then I'm going to go take a walk, or then I'm going to go and, talk with my friends. So they can be those healthy examples of really how to be a gamer, responsibly and healthy and have that good balance.
Absolutely. So one kind of final question for you. I guess I have two more questions for you, and we're going to wrap this up, because we're at that like hour point, and I try not to I don't try not to make these interviews too much longer than that. So do you think that, so obviously esports is in kind of this like Wild West phase where we're still a lot's being figured out. Do you think that we are trying to move too fast with like these large investments, and almost like we're upselling it a little too much, or do you think we're like, it's just going to expand, keep just blowing up and expanding, and we're underselling it? Like, what are your thoughts about like the way the industry's going as far as that goes?
I think that's a really, really good question, and I'm glad that you and others are asking it. So I'm actually thinking of like, one of our colleagues there on the Esports Research Collaborative, Dr. Seth Jenny at a Slippery Rock. He's done some actual research and some studies into that, and what is the true valuation of the esports industry? And we've had those other analytics firms like Newzoo taking a look at that as well, and so. Me personally, do I think that it's overvalued or undervalued or et cetera? Like I would probably myself would refrain from making any kind of a judgment call on that, just because my background is definitely not in economics or things like that. But what I would say is we're seeing it. We're seeing, the proof. And honestly, even this past year has been the proof there that, so many people adopted it as ways to come together and ways to do something interesting together. And I think that that's just going to grow. And I think that, interactivity, especially, whether that's in the form of, AR, VR, movies, 3D, games, whatever that is, I think just as humans, we want to connect and we want to have those meaningful interactions. And any medium that can help us achieve that, I think, is naturally going to get more popular.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I have my own thoughts about the industry itself. I think certain parts are way undervalued. Like, we don't count, like, if my favorite player has a skin in League of Legends and I go buy that skin because my favorite player has it, that's not counted in esports revenue. And it's like, well, I only bought it because the player had it, And so there's some things like that. And in some ways, some people are throwing money at it, like just assuming they're going to get this great return on investment, not realizing that it's like invest. I mean, we're gambling. We don't know where this is going to be in 5 years. It could go in a million different directions. We all hope it works, but like we're in very infant stages right now. Like we're really early.
Yeah.
Schools are throwing building like a
Absolutely.
$5 million stadium, and like they don't know if they're going to have the numbers or students to support. Like they just are doing it, and it's like maybe it's a good investment. Who knows? I don't know. I can't answer that for them. I can only do what I'm doing at UNCW, which is growing it organically and fighting for every penny that
Yes.
they give me. like, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's even what we had, advise to schools, to districts, to universities. We say like, don't underestimate the amount of interest you're going to have because this is popular and kids are going to want to do it. But it's okay to start small
Yeah.
and let it grow organically because it will grow on its own. And then that way you've got kind of the sustainability. You're figuring it
Sure.
out as you go. And maybe you start off with just 5 machines and a club, and then maybe it does grow into a varsity program, and then maybe it does grow into this. Don't feel like you have to have those $5 million
Yeah.
arenas right at the beginning.
I feel like everyone wants that and thinks they have to have that. We grew into a club.
Yeah.
We started from a club, and then we created a few courses, a certificate around it, which we needed. The curriculum piece was a must for my university that I had to have, or there can be nothing. So we didn't do like a degree, but we did a certificate. So there's a few courses around it in a club, and so far it seems to be going. We'll kind of go from there and see what happens. We don't have an arena yet or varsity status, which is kind of our next steps. But we do have team. I mean, I have 6 teams competing in the collegiate leagues and doing well. So it's all exciting stuff. But all right, one final question for you. What's
Okay.
the future hold for you? What's your 5-year
Oh.
plan?
Oh goodness. Man. So one of my favorite comedians, he has a joke and he's like, when they ask you, what do you see yourself doing 5 years from now? You can always respond, celebrating the 5th year anniversary of you asking me that question. I love to see where the educational industry is going. I love to see this grand sociological experiment that we've all been a part of for the past year. How does that help move education forward? How does that help bring innovations that maybe would have taken 10 years before that maybe we've had to adapt to over this past year? So I really look forward to that. I look forward to new educational innovations. I look forward to students helping to dictate where universities, colleges, career and technical vocational schools, where are we going based on student interests and student needs, and really keeping that focus for a changing world that we're in. So that's what I'm excited about, and that's what I hope to be involved with for the next 5 years.
Definitely.
And hopefully the growth of esports is a major part of that.
Yeah, it would be good. It'd be fun at least. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot. You said a lot of good stuff. Is there anything you want to add in or anything like that? I mean, I think you said a lot of really cool stuff that people will be interested in, and made some really good points as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I would just say, feel free, find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect and learn more about what other people are doing and share. I think that's a really great thing to do. And I guess like my final piece of advice, especially for any of your students that might be listening, is, don't feel like you have to take this linear path. I think based on our conversations today, like you can see, like I ended up miles away from where I thought I was going to be when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so, don't feel like if you take a detour or if you get off of whatever path you envisioned yourself on, that it's catastrophic, because honestly, every detour I've taken has made my life better and more interesting and fun. So it's scary not to think about just a straight linear path.
Sure, it is.
But it's rewarding, and don't be afraid to, tactfully, respectfully let your interests out and really express who you are, because that can help you also find some great opportunities.
Definitely. Great advice. It's good. I agree. It's good advice, and I wish everyone takes that into consideration, because it's so important. It's guided my career as well. Like it really has. I know people that went the straight and linear path and it worked great for them, but you don't have to. It's not a
Mhm.
it's not a black or white, yes or no. It's not this like,
Exactly.
there's many ways to go. So, well, thank you
Yeah.
very much, Danielle. It was great.
Yeah.
Good talking to
Thank
you.
you so much. Have a great day.